Please stand for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No, Robert?
You are on.
Yeah.
Online. Just saying, there's nothing. Okay.
What do we have on Zoom tonight?
No one. Just us.
Just us. Nice.
Yeah. I'll keep my eyes.
Everybody
peeled.
knows everybody, so we're all good.
Yeah.
Any addition or deletions?
Nothing.
We're
Major,
rolling.
no.
Approval of the previous minutes.
April 18th. That needs approval.
I'll move that we approve the April 18th minutes.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Rose?
Thank you, Chairman Beecher and the board. First, I want to talk about the trees at the old cemetery. I spoke with Bill Cole from Davy Tree Service this morning, and he said the trees are beyond their 10-foot right-of-way. However, he is willing to meet with me next week, Wednesday, to discuss cost share, because they do that sometimes where the trees might be a problem for their power lines and might be a problem for other folks. So we have pledged the $800 in our budget, and we talked at a previous meeting that you would be willing for cleanup. So I don't know when I meet with him next Wednesday if that still stands. The town would be willing to clean up as part of the cost share.
Why not?
Yeah.
There's no reason we wouldn't, so.
Okay, so I'll find out what the overall cost is from their perspective, and then I'll come back I'm assuming he'll be able to give me a price on the spot. It almost sounded like he may have a budget that he deals with Green Mountain Power, but I'll find that out Wednesday when I meet with him. So that's all I know about the trees at this point. And then I wondered about an update on the air conditioning for the auditorium.
Is that
You
from
know about
Bill
this?
or
From Bill.
Jacob?
From Bill.
This one's from Bill. Okay. Okay, labor and materials $7,915. That's to install a 5-ton York condenser outside. That's everything free on.
$79.50.
Did you hear anything from Jake? Or?
I did, and he didn't, he was gonna send you the quote if he got it done, but apparently he didn't get it done.
I nudged him yesterday morning, and he said that he was waiting to hear on options for heat pumps that could go into the existing system.
He did say that we may be able to get a substantial amount of money from Vermont Efficiency if we went that route, you know.
Instead of just doing a air conditioning.
Yeah,
unit.
yeah.
That's what he told me when we were talking before too, that now the heat pumps have come a long way, so they can put them into an existing ductwork instead of having to have to split
yeah.
pack units.
Yeah. So there's
Yeah,
nothing
I
on the
think we
building,
talked
you
about
will
that
not
with
see
my house also.
anything. And he says Vermont is paying out quite a bit of money for doing it. So he was gonna price it both ways, and we were gonna discuss it to see. I don't know what your guys' feelings is on a heat pump. You know, that to heat the upstairs also.
Well,
And
There is heat there, right?
well, I
there
can
is
just
heat there already.
I can give you my personal experience in working in HVAC for 19 years. Back then, you could heat a building to about 20 degrees more efficiently than oil. And now the systems are even more efficient, so can't even tell you what that would be in modern times. But they've really come a long way with them so that you wouldn't maybe even need to use oil up there.
Yeah, that's what we were
Most of the-
thinking. is
Most of the
that
heating season, and then you'd have the air conditioning, of course, built in.
And like you were saying, there are a lot of incentives both from
Yeah.
the federal government and from the state.
Yes, and that's
So-
what he said. He's like, you could get quite a kickback for if we decided to go that route.
Did either of these contractors give a time frame after decision?
Jake said, I think 4 weeks to 5 weeks. So
I talked with Bill Olson myself today, and he said definitely by the 1st of July.
yeah, and if Jake can get his quote in,
Yeah.
he'll have it in by then also. So, and he said he'd have more numbers on that Vermont efficiency also, because he's doing 3 at Skyline for Camaras up there for their cannabis thing. So
But if you go that route, is there a guarantee that that would be done by July?
yes, yes,
I mean, the heat pump
yes,
part, okay.
yes.
So it's really a decide between the two once we have the second quote.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and see what our kickback is on it. You know.
Just looking at the calendar, you would need to make a decision at the next meeting, which route you would take.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should be able to do that. Between the two of us, we can hound him and,
Light a fire under Jake.
yeah, get a number from him and get them scheduled. We'll decide next meeting and get them scheduled, if we,
Right.
if we decide to go with it. It's,
I mean, my opinion is we should go with something. One
yeah,
of those two.
I just sent him a text to see if he had any numbers, just to bug him a little bit, but we'll see. Yeah, certainly. I'll make
yeah,
sure
we'll
that
make sure by next meeting that we have everything so that we can,
everything will certainly be in order.
yeah.
I'll add you.
Thank you.
Action item.
Anything else, Rose, or?
That was it. Thank you for your time.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Any announcements? Zoning administrator.
Yes. There's a memo from Nancy.
Okay, this is interesting. He said, I got an email today on heat pump. Can do a heat pump and got prices, but haven't had a chance to get the quote together yet.
Okay.
So he should have the quote
In a couple
within
days.
in a day or two. So,
Excellent. Thank you so much.
And will he include the incentives from the state and federal government?
he just texted me back, said $2,400 rebate on heat pump. Zoning administrator.
So Nancy received 3 new permit requests last week, making the total year-to-date 8. The camping trailer occupancy in West Pawlett is still a work in progress. Attended the April Planning Commission meeting. There were considerable discussion on 2 items, fence regulations and short-term rentals. John Sabatka presented an ordinance being considered by Rutland Town on short-term rentals. I plan to present this ordinance for our review at a future meeting. In addition, I will attend Rutland Town's public comment meeting later this month, and Nancy will be she will be in the office tomorrow.
Okay. Let me just text her. Okay, so I just texted him. He said he'll have it in a day or two. We'll have the other quote, so. Okay, any questions or concerns about Nancy's? Okay. Planning Commission. Jessica.
Yes, I have that. The Planning Commission met on Monday, April 24 at 7:30 p.m. We received an update from Michael Allen on the West Pawlett Village Master Plan, which is funded by the municipal planning grant we got. And he wanted our feedback on his recommendations that he's putting into it. He had already had a public meeting in West Pawlett with the draft plan and gotten a bunch of feedback at that time. One of the suggestions that he did want feedback on, and that we ended up talking about for almost his whole bit of the meeting, was the possibility of the town parceling out and selling some of the town-owned land south of the quarry to become a new housing area with smaller lots and homes that could be built on them that could meet the needs of young families and retired people looking to downsize. The Planning Commission was generally open to this idea if the homes created could be appropriately priced so that local families could live in them and they would not be bought up by developers for short-term rentals. There was also some discussion about short-term rentals, which I see Nancy also mentioned in her report, and what we might be able to do about that going forward. The remainder of the meeting was spent going line by line through the proposed updates to the bylaws that we've been working on with Ed Bove from Rutland Regional Planning Commission, and we are going to continue the line by line work next meeting. We got a little further with our line by line. Luckily, we have until about December, I think, to get it done, if we really need to. That's my report.
Any questions?
I got a question. So what was your thinking on short-term rentals?
Our thinking
Are you
was-
thinking that the town ought to control those?
We were thinking that in the bylaws right now, we have a reference to a conditional use in one of the zones for a rooming house, which is, I guess, an old style way of saying a place where people are put up, right? And that is, when people have asked me what our zoning says about short-term rentals, I've always referred them to that and said that's the closest we've got. But it would be good to reference them in particular. The difficulty that we see is that it's great when somebody who lives here has like a little cabin on their land or something and they rent it out as a short-term rental and make some money, but it's not great when developers come in and somebody from out of state buys up a home, puts it out for Airbnb, and then nobody local gets any benefit from it, right? That the housing crunch is quite bad. And then we've got, people from out of state putting up Airbnbs. So, yes, we were thinking we would like to have some sort of ordinance that touches on short-term rentals. The fire chief also came to our meeting a couple meetings ago and expressed his concerns about short-term rentals in that often there are more people in a house than what the house is really capable of holding, or that the fire department doesn't know who might be in a house or how many people or if anyone's even there. And so the unregulated nature of Airbnbs, that they don't even know what buildings are Airbnbs until someone tells them, makes it difficult for them to provide fire safety. I'm probably not getting that entirely right, but there was something about the unpredictable nature. Like if there's a fire at a hotel, I know two of the other planning commission members are here. If there's a fire at a hotel, the fire department will know a lot of people are going to be there. But if there's a fire at somebody's house up on whatever road that often stands empty, the fire department may not, obviously they'll go there, but they might not come prepared to rescue 20 people. I think that was basically what John was getting at.
Yeah, but that could be anybody's house if, might not know how many people are in there. If someone was, had a bunch of people staying over.
I suppose so. You'd have to ask John Weiss. He expressed concern about not knowing what buildings were being used as Airbnbs for the purposes of fire preparedness.
Julie?
Just to that, statistically speaking, someone having a party at their house versus someone that regularly rents out to a varied number of people is gonna be more of a troubleshooting issue for fire department. But then this may not be appropriate now to comment as like at a planning commission meeting, but I would just really quickly say, it seems in this area that there's like plenty of high-end housing and there's plenty of work being focused in the legislature right now on very low-end housing, and there is not a lot in the middle.
I
And
have
so
heard about the missing middle.
if the missing middle could be addressed in some way, I do think that that's important. And I know it's a big thing to take on as a small town, but it's really a crucial missing piece. We're struggling in our school districts to find people that are, moderately well paid that can afford a place that they're willing to live in, because there's really only low end and really only high end housing. And it's a problem.
Yeah, thank you.
Frank?
It was an involved meeting, and one of the things that was brought up Gary brought it up, and everybody's nodding, is that a lot of this Airbnb stuff doesn't have to comply with like hotel regulations and safety regulations and things like that. That it's a more free-for-all than the competing lodging. Which was a good point, and it would certainly be looked into in the future. And we played around with some new thoughts, which was some stuff may not actually fall into the unified bylaws or the zoning administrator permitting, but could fall into the jurisdiction of a select board ordinance. And that would be one potential. Another would be the placement of it was brought up, container storage and the length of time it's stuck there, whether or not that would be planning commission getting a permit to have it there, or if it would be a permitted ability through an ordinance for an automatic amount of time. If you violate the time, you violate the ordinance, and it automatically goes to the select board as a violation, as opposed to going through all of the processes that the select board and that process we know well. And there was one other. What was it? There was something else brought up in the ordinance potential.
I don't recall. I mean, for further details on the meeting, we could, I'm sure the minutes have been provided. Rick was absent, so Harley filled in and took very detailed minutes, and probably has got all the discussions in there.
Maybe it was brought up signage, but maybe signs would be a select board ordinance.
Well, yeah, we already. There was a lot of discussion at the meeting about a number of things. Yes, but we have not made any decisions yet to bring to the select board.
Okay, anything else on the Tony? Or planning commission? Road foreman?
So I've not received a report, but work continues at the end of the Wait Hill Road, the Route 30 side. And I did speak to Dale briefly yesterday just via text, because somebody came to me and asked about grading, and was concerned about the fact that grading had not yet been completed on Wait Hill Road. So I did ask Dale, and he just said that as the weather allows, with the rain and allowing it to dry up. So within the next handful of days, they anticipate to continue onwards with that. And then I have a couple other things. I don't know if either of you had anything else to contribute for.
Just in regards to speccing out the Mac, I do plan to get together with Dale this week, and we're gonna go over some, specs on a Mac and international possibly. So that's in the works.
And then, so a couple of other things. So the highway department needs a new computer. So on the topic of computers, Vinny got mine and wiped it all out and restored it to the day it was born. And it's just as like subpar as it's ever been, which is good. So it's working just fine for me. There was some ideas of maybe giving Dale this computer and then I could get a new computer, but in talking with him, there are some more, I think, durable options out there, which I think, based on like having a recent meeting at the highway department and or at the town garage, and just understanding what Dale's comfort level with computers are, I think it might be worth looking into something a little bit more rough and tumble for that application, because it'll need to be taken out and about. So I did ask Vinny if he could price a computer. They make touchscreen laptops now too, which are a little bit more friendly. Dale had said that that might be a better learning curve for him. So I did ask Dale about pricing out a new I asked Vinny about pricing a new laptop for the highway department. So that's something I asked him if he could have a price for me today, but I have not heard anything from him. So stay tuned on that. I did talk to our friend Greg with the state, who talked to us about the speed signs and the need for them to be taken down. So you might have noticed that they have been taken down, but I feel like they should be reinstalled. So just because, we have them, and so it would probably be good to put them back up. So if the town would like to put them back up on state highway, we need to apply for a permit. And I have just started, I have those emails, and I just need to kind of decipher them a little bit, and we would need to apply for a permit, and then there's some specs and whatnot that we would need to do in order to have them meet the state standards for installation. Obviously, if we wanted to put them on town roads, the state doesn't monitor that, so we can go wild. So,
Well, I have received a request at the meeting where where Michael Allen was presenting the draft West Pawlett plan. There were a bunch of West Pawletters there, obviously, and I had a request that we put one of the speed signs back in West Pawlett, because that's not a state road, that's our road, right? And there was some clamoring for it to be in front of the fire department, and some other people thought it should be further up that hill before you come down the hill to the fire department, so people would start slowing down earlier.
is that where it was?
It was in front of the fire department for a while,
Right.
right?
So,
More up towards their Nestle's building.
yeah.
Yeah, so that I am passing along this request, and I said I thought that was a great idea, since we can't have them technically right now on the state roads.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. Don't we have 4 now?
yeah, so 2 of them are still up.
It's on North Pawlett.
There's one on North Pawlett Road,
Yeah.
and then the second one is, I don't know where the second one
It's in the
is.
town garage.
No, there's 4 total. There's 2 in the town garage.
We'll put 2 in West Pawlett for sure. I mean,
No, we took one down.
Yeah.
So there's 3 in the town garage.
There's one in West Paula town garage that got
Oh.
knocked over
Good.
this winter, and
Well,
it's
we're
inside.
making great use of those. So we should definitely put those back up.
Yes.
So maybe one by the fire department, and then if everybody wants to kind of put their brainstorming on. I don't know if there's any speed issues on Herrickbrook Road anymore. If we can just think about some town roads where maybe we'd like for them to go, and then if you would all like, I can continue to look into the idea of the permit so that we can put them up on state roads again, because
that was
part of the
point.
intention of getting them. So I wanted to move forward with that, but I wanted to make sure it was okay.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go for it.
And then in the meantime, maybe we'll consider some local roads to pop them up on, so that they're not collecting dust.
I hope it's not a factor, but 153 is a state-aided highway, so it's a gray
Well, so
area.
that's,
They may-
And I asked him about switching any help on the monument stuff. He said, well, that doesn't really belong to us, so.
so I'd
Yeah,
say
we-
we should just,
We have to,
Yeah.
we have to
We'll tell
pay
them
for it.
it's
It's ours.
Yeah,
right,
if
so
it-
that,
If they didn't want to help us on doing anything for the monument intersection, so then they're not gonna be able to crab about a
so
sign.
is everybody okay with me working with Dale just to sort of get an idea, and we can pop them up, one there, and if anybody has any other requests?
The one in front of the fire department ended up there because I knew we could get permission to put it where it was, on the property where it was.
Okay.
And he's actually asked me the other day about when it was coming back,
Oh,
because
good, okay.
they still buzz down through there at a pretty good speed.
Okay, good.
The guy across
The other one was in front of the town garage over there for a while, and then we moved it back to slow them down going through the
In North
bump.
Pawlett.
Yeah,
Yeah, so,
the quarry there.
right.
Frank?
The meeting, more people affected by the fire department location were pro that, but there's some people up the road that as you come off from where Larry Lester's plant was by Little's house, and you start down that hill, that's really where they wanted to have the speed sign set up, which we haven't tried before, I don't believe.
If I remember, we had it up there and then it wasn't quite, we moved
I don't
it
think
down, right? I know we moved it on that road. I seem to remember, but anyway.
It was up by the dump for a while. One of
Yeah,
them was up
yeah.
by the dump, and then I
Yeah.
think we moved that one down there.
Yeah,
But-
so,
Then we put
In order
the
to
one
put
in
it
front of
anywhere up through there, we'd have to have permission from the landowner, anywhere up through there, so
so we'll have
that
to
would
be
be
sure to
a-
ask
Mhm.
about
that would be an important part before we could even consider that. So
That would make sense right at the end of town, and you're going down that hill, people are going fast, and there's kids there, and things in the neighborhood. But anyway,
And then,
have two of them, put one on each side of the town.
Well, the good thing about having it where it was, the kids could get on their bicycles and skateboards and race and see how fast they could go.
yeah,
They enjoyed that pretty good. It made the kids pretty busy.
it's valuable. And then the last thing that I have to add is, so there was another incident at the North Pawlett Road and Route 30 intersection where a car blew through and didn't notice the stop sign and landed on the lawn. And so the landowner there across the way was wondering what was going on with that. So I made a couple of phone calls, and it was on their radar and it seemed to have fallen off the radar. But we had a conversation with Ethan from the Agency of Transportation, I believe. And there is a new, he's from the Rutland Regional Planning Commission, actually. So there's a new grant that's just been announced, which is the Highway Safety Improvement Grant. And it is meant for smaller rural towns, and it's meant for projects just like this to improve these smaller rural highways. So I explained the situation to him. He looked it up on the maps, and I forwarded you all an email shortly before the meeting, but it's more information about the grant. It's 0% match, so there's no money that we would have to kick in, and it's funding from anywhere between $5,000 and $35,000. And we talked a little bit about that intersection, and he had said that for this particular grant, the funding could go towards additional signage, so maybe, reworking the stop sign where it is currently and then adding another one perhaps to the other side of that intersection, maybe adding some like road paint or something there, and then also doing some tree removal to help where it applies to help with visibility. And the other thing that he had mentioned, just with like kind of quick shooting off the hip, was that intersection really widens when you get towards Route 30, and wider roads usually encourage faster speeds. So something that we could even consider would be to sort of rework the actual like width of that intersection and maybe make it a little bit more narrow or do something else like that. So really it would just be to help with safety improvements. So that was just announced. So again, I just got that this afternoon, so I wanted to look into that and apply for it.
Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, so seems like it could be manageable and could make a really big difference and hopefully prevent.
Save a life.
Yeah, it just seems like it's only that intersection continues to just be a thorn in the side and not much gets done about it. So if we could get it funded.
Would Ethan help us write the grant?
Yeah, well, his words were, I'm paraphrasing, but since it's designed for rural towns, it's really simple to fill out.
Yay.
So I said, well, that's perfect, because that's just perfect. So I think it's going to be quite simple. And so I'll do my best to do it. And if he said, he said he's happy to help in any way that he can. And it is in the email that I sent to you, he sent an image. Intersection warning sign and some brush clearing and an additional stop sign. So then he said from there, if we wanted to get a study done to maybe look at, further backup of what that traffic looks like. But I thought we were on the list for a study and it hasn't happened, so, but I'll keep going with that and keep you posted.
Sounds good. Anything else for the highway? The assessors, we got a letter from the assessors.
Yeah.
I think there's a second page on that.
Thanks, Julie. Okay, so inspections have been completed and inspection data entry for the 2023 grand list has been completed. The CAMA, computer assisted mass appraisal software through ProVal, the problems concerning data entry for inspections is still unresolved. We have contacted Momentum for assistance with this issue, but have not connected with an IT person yet. We have worked with NEMRIC concerning uploads to the new VT Pi system and now have a way to extract the information from the Grand List software for this year's Grand List lodging. So we will have more time to update our ProVal software and test it before switching to uploads to VT Pi from CAMA. We are now receiving homestead declaration downloads from VT Pi on a regular basis, and there are still many bugs being worked out. The current use download is also now available, but again, there are still many bugs being worked out in that. Because of all of the technical issues we have been experiencing, we are requesting an extension of 30 days to lodge the Grand List. The Grand List deadline is June 4th, and the extension would give us until July 4th in case we are unable to complete our work by the initial deadline. Lisa will be working in the office one Monday each month and as necessary from home, and Karen will continue to be in the office on Mondays and alternate Wednesdays. And this is the official letter requesting the extension, which if you approve it, needs to be signed by Mike.
That still gives us time to get our tax bills out to stay on track, or?
Sure, it just makes my life suck. But the good news is I've ordered meat birds for the beginning of July, so my life will be sucking all summer long. I'm not going anywhere. I'm gonna be right here in Pawlett.
What have you ordered?
Meat birds.
Oh, I don't know what I thought you said. It wasn't meat birds though. Okay.
Right over there in Spanktown.
Didn't they have an extension last year too?
They did. They have every year that I've been.
Yeah, I was thinking they always have an extension.
Okay.
So
Somebody want to make a motion to approve the extension?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, have a second?
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And that's it for the assessors. Anything else? Town clerk's memo.
There is one fleet excess weight permit to be signed, and Deb received that email from Bill. And have a good evening.
All right, Bob's taking care of that, so we're all good there.
So,
Any other questions? Town clerk? Treasurer?
I have 2 warrants this week. Payroll is $9,886.79. Accounts payable $16,222.54. General fund money is $17,016.26. Highway $7,787.24. Wastewater $1,030.76, and records restoration fund money is $275.07. I heard this week from Joint to Galusha that municipalities in Vermont are not tax exempt according to the state of New York, and that they made an error in accepting our exemption form and are going to be billing us around $4,200 in uncollected sales tax from 2020 to present, and moving forward charging us 7% sales tax on materials that we receive from Joint to Galusha. So when that information was passed along to me, it came from Galusha, and what the woman said was that she had assumed that because we were in a municipality that they were that they didn't have to assess us the tax, so they didn't. We, in that period, had about $60,000 worth of goods that we purchased, and so it's gonna be a $4,227.12 bill. And then there's 2 invoices that I have on hand that she asked me to hold, and they were going to like rebill those with the 7% sales tax. I reached out to the New York Department of Tax, which was not super helpful. They told me to fill out a certain form, and when I looked at that form, it very clearly stated that it was for New York governmental agencies, which we are not. And then I reached out to the Vermont Department of Taxes, and the woman there told me that that's how it works in Vermont. If New York municipalities come to Vermont, they're subject to our sales tax. So it actually made sense to her that we would be the same. I also reached out to the town clerk and treasurer in Rupert, and she did look up, they don't purchase a lot from Galusha, but they did get some stuff this winter, and she looked it up and they were not assessed a tax. So she's assuming she'll be getting a letter. Whereas we got a phone call because we bought a lot. But she did say that they do have a fuel company that's based out of New York, and that they provided them with a legal explanation, and they're subject to sales tax on fuel that they buy through this New York company. I heard back from our auditor, and he was surprised to hear that that's Vermont sales tax policy and that it was New York sales tax policy, but that if that's what it is, that makes sense that we would likely have to pay this. You know, he had said potentially you could go back and say that the price that you were quoted was not the price that you're trying to charge us if you're including this sales tax. I don't have the quote, so I don't know if there's language that would support that. We can reach out to Merrill if we feel like it's a worthwhile expenditure to see if she feels that we would be obligated to go back in time that long to pay sales tax. The only thing that I would say about that is, how do you feel about the relationship that you have established with this vendor, and is it worthwhile in protecting that relationship at the limited expense of $4,200? So those are questions. I have not reached out to Merrill on this. That's a decision that I would have you make.
Julie and I did talk some today, and I feel that the taxes, it was an oversight on their part, but it's necessary, and that's just their state rules, and we need to pay it. And I know that if a business gets audited in Vermont, they go through every little thing with a fine-tooth comb, and if they look for all kinds of ridiculous records anyway. That so maybe New York State Department's the same way. That
So John's guess, and it was initially my guess too, was that there's something like that had happened, that Jointa was audited.
Yeah.
And then Jointa was assessed a bill, and now they're trying to recoup some of that.
so.
It does seem too bad we have to go back all those many years. And if I hadn't charged somebody sales tax, I'd have to just eat it.
Yeah, it's your fault.
Yeah.
It's a mistake you made.
But
Thing is, we like their material.
Yeah, the only thing we could do is call them, renegotiate and say, hey, look, let's give us a price with that sales tax in there that's comparable to what we're paying right now, if possible, you know?
I believe,
Yeah,
I
we
believe
can- I
that
haven't tried to negotiate.
when we first
for-
started doing business with them, they adjusted the price to give us New York State contractor's price instead of average Joe contractor price. So I'm sure
So they're
that
giving us a deal.
they were giving us the same prices they were charging all the towns in New York State, as opposed to what they were charging just whoever came in off the street. So I'm sure that that deal won't hold if we try and play hardball.
Are we going to Wallingford?
Yeah. So, and that's an option. So,
But it is important to at least reflect on that, right? And like take the whole picture, and because we didn't have that when we first got quotes. on our rocks. We got quotes and we just assumed that there wasn't an additional 7%. So I don't know mathematically what makes sense. I haven't looked at any of the quotes or what they would be today. But, I mean, it is important to at least think about that as we decide to get more material.
I think we should just pay the tax, because it's a tax. It's not like they change their mind about what they wanted for the material.
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna profit from it.
Frank?
Taxes are due, can't get away from death of taxes. But what I'm saying is that would one vendor selling to another vendor incur a sales tax, whereas a New York vendor could sell to a Vermont vendor, and then Vermont vendor sell to the town where then the tax exempt would apply?
I think I'm picking up what you're laying down. Permission to answer?
Sure.
If a material is tax exempt, is different than if a purchaser is a tax exempt entity. Rocks are not tax exempt. So if a contractor buys them, a New York State contractor buys them to use on a New York State resident's driveway, they're paying tax. But if a New York municipality buys those rocks from Galusha, they are a tax exempt entity according to the state of New York, and they are not paying tax. So the issue isn't can we like work it through multiple vendors to get to us, because multiple vendors are going to be paying sales tax, so we're just going to keep paying the sales tax on that all day long. The issue is that we thought we were a tax exempt organization according to the state of New York, and we are not.
And Galusha assumed the same thing.
Galusha did assume the same thing. I do feel a little bit bad for this lady. Like, she has expressed that it is not friendly for her there right now.
So even if Galusha were to deliver it to Vermont, it's still not tax exempt.
It might be, but we pay to have it delivered.
Well, they could hire us for $1 a load to deliver it to Pawlett.
Yeah, but if they're selling it out of state, then I don't think that wouldn't qualify.
Yeah, it just creates more
yeah.
loopholes. It
Sometimes
would
it's where the
complicate
delivery
everything.
happens, where the sale actually occurs.
And I'm not 100% that if they delivered it, it would be tax exempt, but I do know when I talked to the Vermont Tax Department that was a question expressly asked to me. Do you pick it up in New York or do they bring it to you in Vermont? Before she would answer my question. So it is potentially an answer, but
Because we used to have to pay tax on our vehicles. If we bought them in New York State, we had to pay New York State sales tax, but if they delivered it to our residents in Vermont, we only had to pay Vermont state sales tax.
yeah.
So, which is a %, but it adds up on a $20,000 vehicle or something, so.
My guess from just reading this conversation so far is that we may want to separate this into two questions. One being, do we pay this retroactive sales tax that they refuse to collect, because it does sound like they were audited and they've been assessed a hefty fee. And then the separate second question is, moving forward, what are we going to do? And I think that we should probably look at moving forward with a longer lens than tonight, for sure. But I do know that they were looking for us to let them know if we were willing to pay this bill pretty timely.
I agree with Mike that we should probably just pay it. It sounds like it would be more of a hassle to try to finagle our way out of paying it than to just pay it.
Yeah, I agree that we've got to just pay it as well, and it doesn't feel quite right.
We don't have to like it when we do it.
That's right. It's a great resource, you know, I mean, we need their material, really. good people to do business with.
And this is really nothing to do with them. It's not, they're not prospering.
They didn't change
from
their
it.
mind.
Other than it was a fact that it was a mistake that they made in their office. You know, the state didn't make that mistake for them. We didn't make that mistake for them. They made it.
Correct
So,
information.
most generally, you just eat it. But in this case,
They had 3 years to find it there.
Mhm.
So, but we need to use them.
Is that a motion?
yes.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
That was a sad
Thank
motion.
I get
Everybody's
it.
like-
I mean, I feel the same
No one's
way,
gonna
but it's
cheer
like-
about paying taxes.
Everybody's like, aye. Okay, retro.
Only missing is the Boston Tea Party.
Oh.
Okay.
When you do make your motions, I did have an error on my memo to you on the number of the second motion is 23060. I failed to make that adjustment.
Do we, are they gonna send us an exact bill or?
Yes.
Okay.
They're gonna send it. She was waiting to hear from me before she sent the bill on what we would owe, but she did tell me the exact amount, which was $4,227.12.
Okay.
We still need to have a motion on the
And then
other-
we need a motion on the warrants.
The warrants.
the warrant, so I'll make a motion on the payroll warrant 23059 for $9,886.79, and warrant 23057
60.
for $16,222.54.
With one amendment, the payroll warrant is 23060.
Correct.
Perfect.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Anything else for Julie?
I have a couple things that I think are related to this report. I submitted the yearly report for the ARPA funds. You sent me the info, Julie, and I submitted it before the deadline of April 30th. So that's taken care of. They keep sending you automated emails, and I'm like, they're like, disregard this if you did it already. I'm like, I did it already. So anyhow, that's taken care of. Also, for the VORET grant that we got, Pawlett is the lead town. So Jim Henderson from no, he's working with Rupert, but he's with the Bennington basically the version of Rutland Regional Planning Commission that they have in Bennington, but it has a different acronym, so I can't remember
Okay.
it. But he will be sending us invoices that we need to pay, and then we will be reimbursed.
Okay.
So if Jim Henderson gets in touch with you and has invoices for like for resurfacing some parking lots and things and making signs, we're gonna pay it. We have to keep all that stuff, which we could do anyhow, and then we'll submit it for reimbursement from the grant.
Okay.
And one other thing related to Treasury report, sideways, is that I've signed up for a training through VLCT about understanding municipal finances, since I'm the liaison to the treasurer's office. So I figured that would be a good thing to do.
Great. Good deal. So that's it. Thank you, Julie.
Sure.
Emergency management, not tonight.
Yes. It's the first of the month.
Oh, it is, isn't it? Oh my God, it's the one.
May just turned over. It doesn't feel like May. That's all right.
Yeah, it's May. So from Bob Morlino, during the month of April, he signed a contract with OPH Consulting Services for producing the local hazard mitigation plan update. A team will be organizing in the coming weeks to initiate the project, and Jackie Becker initiated the organization of shelter volunteers. Once we get a team together, we will have training through the Red Cross. And that's from Bob Morlino.
Jennifer, have a report? Jennifer, do you have a report for tonight?
No, there's been no activity other than the ongoing situation situation in West Pawlett on 153, and I do not have any updates since the email that I sent you all.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Jennifer? All right, thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome.
I haven't heard anything from wastewater treatment, so.
I reached back out by email, and I think I included you in that email
Yes,
too.
I saw
and,
that.
to John Kiernan, the guy who was doing wastewater grants for us. Because I remembered he'd said in the spring we should touch base again, so I just thought it was worthwhile to reach out to him.
Keep it going. Good. Facilities report? Nothing
Just
other
what's going
than
on.
we're working on
Anything,
it.
everything good over at the library, Harley?
Yes.
To get the whole patch to painted? You couldn't find a ladder big enough?
I still haven't located a ladder, but I got a couple more leads.
Okay. Do you have a school board?
I do. At our regular meeting on April 10th, 2023, the board approved the superintendent's interpretation of policy 2.7, monitored policies 3.0 and 3.1, as well as updating the work plan for policy monitoring schedules. We authorized the chair to set up a teacher appreciation gift and write a letter to Mettawee staff in honor of Teacher Appreciation Week, which is from May 8th through 12th. So if you know a teacher, send them a card. If you don't, send one anyways. A date was set for the board annual retreat, and we followed up about the community engagement event held on March 29th and future steps to work with the data acquired at that event. Our next board meeting will be May 8th, which will be here at the Pawlett Town Hall and virtually on Google Meets. As always, we welcome public comment during our regularly scheduled meeting. That's it.
Any questions, comments?
I was wondering, I remember we talked about this last year. I was just thinking about the end of the school year coming up. We have that, is it Irene Hatfield? Right behind you. Yes, that prize, the Irene Hatfield Citizen Award that we give out to a graduating student at Mettawee. And we had talked about maybe putting a $25 cash amount on it because the other town, Rupert, does that. And I don't think Rupert should show us up in like, you know,
we should do 30.
Anyhow, I would like it if we could.
Have a bad.
'Cause I handed that out last year and I was like, oh, weren't we going to give them also $25? So I would like to move that we add a $25 gift in cash to whoever gets that this year.
The Irene Hanfield Award,
Yeah.
sure. Do we need an actual vote?
I don't know
That
if we
was
need to vote or
I
not.
think you could, we don't have like a budget line item set up for it, but we certainly can moving forward from all future budgets beyond the one that we set, but you could have a vote to just transfer $25 from
Petty
the
cash.
town hall, yeah, anything with,
Yeah.
any fund that I choose, I
I'm
guess.
sure you
Let-
can find
give me the
$25
descri- whatever,
yeah.
Oh, may I make the motion or whatever?
No, Jessica already
I
made the motion.
You can
Bob
second
can
my
second
motion,
it.
Bob.
All in favor of kicking in $25?
Aye.
Aye.
Canfield, all right.
All right.
Opposed? Carried.
That doesn't hurt as bad as the 4,200.
No, we're like, sure, give a kid $25. They deserve it.
You can walk out of here smiling now.
Eileen was a pretty nice lady.
Yep.
I have a question. Do I need to make a note of where the money's coming from in that motion? I just said transferred from a fund,
That
but I don't
works.
think
That works for me and I can report back on what the
transferred
fund
from
is.
a fund. All right, well, that's
If you want to pass it, have to.
from an
From
appropriate
Frank's
fund.
donation.
Well, any business in town would write that off. If you wanted to ask any business that they wanted to do it.
Okay, that's great.
Maybe even more.
And Rupert would still show us up.
Yeah, well, I'm good.
Older unfinished? Bike and pedestrian grant?
We don't have any update on that, but I do have just a little update on the municipal planning grant, which is that the draft I know I mentioned it a little bit in the planning commission thing, but Michael Allen has completed his first draft of the West Pawlett Village Master Plan, and it has been presented to the public at the firehouse in West Pawlett. He has also then presented it to the planning commission. He is going to need to be presenting it to us as a select board at some point when we have a final report. The grant finishes out at the end of May, which is this month. So we need to spend all the money by the end of May. And then we need to make a report by the end of June. He has said that he's okay as long as we pay him by the end of May. This okay with doing a little bit more work into June, just if he has to do a little finishing up on this plan. I don't think there's going to be a problem with us getting this done on time, as it was pretty close to finished. But I think my takeaway from this is that for those of you who haven't seen the plan yet and want to have feedback on it, do that. Because he has to wrap it up within a month.
Frank?
There was some incongruities with the plan, like the traffic intersection and a few other concepts, that because we had a lot more people at this meeting than previous meetings, and other ideas were flowing in. So he was surprised by that. And the group, Michael, you, myself, and the other three are going to have to get together and hammer out that difference, apparently. And to come up with a solid draft plan. I was also going to add that we needed to have an energy component to it, because that's the future. And that wording hasn't been thought out yet. And it might be that it will just have to dovetail with what the Planning Commission, or AKA the Energy Group, is the same group, comes up with for the town-wide energy plan, where it has a piece that can dovetail in and be referenced, amended from that West Pawlett plan to be added to in order to add an energy component to it. I could wait till later to say something. I'll say it right now. Is the state coming down with the affordable housing thing? And when this was brought up at the select board at the town meeting, I said there's market forces involved. And that's if you transfer property to somebody, they can always sell it for whatever. It's real estate, it's a sale, it's ownership, you can sell it, right? So one of the things that came up was how to, because in Pawlett, for example, versus West Pawlett, some people who live in Pawlett might feed us more information here, is that a lot of the old families, their children can't afford to buy a place in the village of Pawlett. Is that generally true? I've heard it from a number of sources. West Pawlett hasn't been that much, but there has been some people moving in who have sold someplace else and they're able to afford a lower price in West Pawlett. So that actually becomes a higher price. So that means the affordability in the future of West Pawlett would be in danger of becoming like Pawlett, which is, West Pawlett is our quote unquote affordable housing area of town right now. So when it came to the increase, this subdivision concept, you can't do anything with property that's owned. They can sell it for whatever they want to sell it for. But if there was a break off of a piece of land and broken up into really small pieces, Act 250 will allow this for 3 years. There's been a change for this affordable housing because there's like 4,000 or 5,000 open job positions in the state of Vermont and only 1,000 residential housing structures to house work. So laborers, so they can't even bring laborers in and house them for them to fill those empty jobs, those needed advertised jobs. So I brought up the New York City situation where they had rent control, which actually saved restaurants and theaters and all artists and stuff like this from basically
I see Jennifer has.
not having to pay somebody buying a building and increase the rent by 5 times, forcing these people out. And their local restaurants don't have somebody can afford to waitress or bartender or whatever because they just simply can't afford the rents anymore. This happened in California, and so it's a rent control situation. And there's 2 ways that can handle that: municipal ownership of the property with conditions of occupancy, and it becomes a long-term lease, or it becomes a transfer with conditions of ownership along the lines of a rent control, where the affordable housing people, local people maybe, would not be facing eviction and having to move someplace else in the future, and this would be a longer-term plan to basically have housing for.
Okay, it sounds like planning commission kind of stuff.
Well, it's something that would incorporate your decision on that.
Thank you. Jennifer?
I just was gonna give a plug to that end for my, for Habitat for Humanity. If the town owns property or a private party for that matter and sells it or donates it to Habitat for Humanity, they build affordable housing, sell it at cost to a family who qualifies. They become the homeowner, they become taxpayers. It's, in my opinion, worth looking at. Just affordable housing for local people. Anyway, it's near and dear to my heart. I volunteer with them regularly. If you want any more information, I'm happy to provide that.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Is there any other old or unfinished business?
I have one more old business. I know I always have, it's always Jessica's reports in old business.
Good.
I'm just writing down that Jennifer has
Could
that
you remember all the
connection.
stuff we forget?
Okay, so I went last Friday to, I told you I was going to go to this meeting at the dog park. I have a report back from my meeting at the dog park. Okay, so this property is the one down Highway 30 past the Yellow Farm, past Herrick Brook Road, just into Rupert, where there's that, it's actually a park that has something to do with the Vermont Land Trust. But I found out a bit of the history of this property, and I won't go into the whole thing, but basically there used to be a nonprofit agency that had a board and administered this park under the auspices of the Vermont Land Trust. The nonprofit fell apart. There's no more nonprofit. The land is still owned by the 2 abutting farmers. And the Vermont Land Trust wants to know what's going to happen with it, because right now nobody's really maintaining it. Yes.
When did the 501c3 fall apart? Because we issued them a check. Because they're voted on every year in March. So if there isn't an entity to issue a check to, who's cashing the checks?
I do not know that, but I can find this out. There hasn't been a board, so I guess the 501c3 technically kind of still exists, and it might be that some of the farmers are doing the maintenance on there.
Well, the
but
grass gets cut.
yes,
for sure.
the Vermont Land Trust 2 years ago got a grant of $15,000 to basically figure out what's going on, and they have been mowing the lawn. They've been using that money to pay for mowing the lawn and to pay for trying to figure things out. But where it's at right now is, so I met with representatives from Dorset and Rupert, the Dorset town manager and someone from the Rupert Select Board, and with Donald Campbell from the Vermont Land Trust. And what the Land Trust would really like to see happen is since the nonprofit is basically defunct, they would love for one or more or a combination of local municipalities to enter into the lease with Vermont Land Trust about this land and to then put it under that town or town's insurance, because that's a big deal for the Vermont Land Trust, and for a town, it would be basically very little to bring another small parcel under their insurance. And then they need someone to maintain it. So and we had a bit of discussion about how the property is technically in Rupert, but most people in Rupert live across the mountain, so not a lot of people use it. The people who use this dog park are mostly from Dorset or Pawlett, and so that Dorset or Pawlett might be interested in the fate of this lot. There's also a possibility that it won't be in the future be a dog park anymore, that other things could happen. Like if we wanted to put up like a ballpark or something on that property, that would be an option if local people wanted to do that.
That's what it was. It's
Yeah.
not a dog park.
Yeah, the
It was
people
never
that
built
built
as a
it-
dog park. That is a ball field.
Yes.
I played
Well, they're
softball
using it as a
there.
dog park right now. Right now, it's being used as a
Sure.
dog park.
One of the two purposes.
So,
I would
What-
put the cows in there myself and
It's
just
not a
say,
very nice ballpark.
so
No,
what?
that's a
What the
ball.
Vermont Land Trust would love to see happen would be if these three municipalities who care about this property and use it kind of come to some kind of understanding about what we want done with it. And to that end, they were hoping to draw up a memorandum of understanding between the three towns that we are going to decide what we want to do with it by hopefully the end of September, and that each select board would have a vote on whether we wanted to be involved in entering into a multi-town unit to decide on its future and also like make sure it gets maintained. I said that if this memorandum, and I brought up that we would want to know like what kind of money this would be involved with this. But the memorandum of understanding would not be that we would give any money or that we would do anything other than consider what to do with it and make a decision about if we wanted to be involved by the end of September. So I said I didn't see a big reason. I didn't guarantee that we would do it, but I said I didn't really see a big reason why we wouldn't enter into a memorandum of understanding just to join with the other towns to make a decision. Anyhow, that's my report, and I can give more information if anyone wants it.
I have a question. So there's two farms that own it, right? Two farmers
Two
own it?
farmers own the property. Yeah, the underlying property, but it is conserved through the Vermont Land Trust.
Which they conserve the development rights.
Mm-hmm.
So did they give up all their rights to the property? Do the farmers, are they in agreement with this? I would assume they are if Donald,
The farmers don't want the liability of something happening on this property, is what I understood. Also, I understand that one of the farmers doesn't care for it to be a dog park because the dogs bother his dogs.
so my understanding would be that if the farmers wanted, they could plow that up and turn it into a cornfield, right?
Part of it is already a cornfield. Yeah, part of the trust is part of the cornfield. Yeah, and that would be for, but if no one takes over the Vermont Land Trust doesn't want to conserve it just to have it be a field. They would prefer it to be a park of some kind. What I think I understood was that if nobody takes over the lease with the Vermont Land Trust, the Vermont Land Trust will revert the land to the farmers. And stop conserving
So this,
it.
it's not traditionally conserved. There's some type of special agreement there.
Yeah, there must be. I'm not entirely certain
Right.
what that is.
Yeah, that's.
But yeah.
Charlie?
Clarence Decker's wife may know the details, because Clarence was the one that built that park, and I think he'd probably roll over in his grave if he found out it was a place for dogs to go crap at, but
Yeah, I mean, it's.
there was men's league softball played there for years.
We
and
did
had a
discuss
great
how nice
time,
that
and-
little pavilion is that the Boy Scouts built, right? And that if it was all plowed back under, it would be a pity to lose that nice little pavilion.
There's a couple problems that no one's gonna go play softball there if everybody takes their dogs there to, probably doesn't. Hopefully they clean up after
Is that the
themselves.
Pooper Scooper? Right?
And the other thing is that the farmers tend to plant corn crops in front of it. So I know some ladies in town that used to go walk the track around the outside of it because it was a nice spot to go for a walk. But they don't feel safe back there when the corn crop grows up because no one even knows that you're back there. If strangers pull in,
Yeah.
you're muffled from Route 30 and no one knows you're there.
And I think those are all concerns that, some similar concerns were expressed by people there at this meeting. And I think that if a town or towns were to decide to take over that park, that something different might easily be done with the property. Yeah. But no one would have to decide right away what to do with the property. The Vermont Land Trust guy kind of thought that if a town or towns took over the lease, that the next thing to do would be to have a public process where people gave input about who have used that park at some point or who haven't, like what they would like to see, like what local people would want to use a recreational area of that size for. So that could be done in the future as well.
Carly, you had your hand up?
Yes, are the farmers being paid lease amounts for the use of the park there?
I don't know how conserving land through the Vermont Land Trust typically works. I believe that you get an easement that you provide an easement on the land, and then you get, you don't have to pay as much taxes on it. I think, but I don't know.
There's nothing typical about that easement with the land trust. I've worked with the land trust many, many times. And I mean, that's a special deal that they must have worked with. The farmers must have given up those rights. You know, normally.
Because there was a nonprofit also.
Yeah, and I don't know any of those details, but working with the land trust, they come in and they buy your development rights if that's what you want to do, and then they just hold those. But in this case, it sounds like the farmers own the land, but there's some special arrangement that they must have made with the land trust or with somebody, or that nonprofit must be. Yeah, I don't really understand the details of that one.
Yeah, and it sounds like the Vermont Land Trust is not entirely sure what the details are right now either, because this nonprofit was involved, which now is defunct.
Right.
So, yeah, it seems like they just really want to regularize the situation and make it make sense.
Frank?
I was the treasurer of a 501c3 for about 30 years, environmental group, and worked in other treasury capacities and knew about this. A while ago, there was a change where there was a lot of fictitious nonprofits floating out there.
Is this pertinent to this particular conversation?
It's pertinent, yes. And what the federal government did is they made you, even though you didn't owe a tax as a nonprofit, register each year with just simply go online, fill out a few web pages, and you were good to go as a legitimate nonprofit. Now, a lot of smaller nonprofits were unaware of this, to operate as nonprofits with a designation around. So that would end the nonprofit potentially. Okay. The other thing is that if we were to go in on something like this, you might want to contact Vermont League of Cities and Towns for the insurance to see if we have insurable interest in any such arrangement.
Thank you. Okay, so at this point, we just got to kind of ponder this idea a little bit and
Yeah.
then decide what we want to do, if we want to get involved in this or if we want to walk away from this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Donald Campbell from the Land Trust will be drawing up a memorandum of understanding, and he'll be emailing it around. So once that's written up, we can see what it says. It'll probably say, we agree to look into this and have a vote on it at some point this year.
Okay.
And once I get that, I can bring it before the board at the next meeting after that.
Okay.
Has anyone consulted with Dave Tooley on this?
I don't think so, but I think it's probably Kenny and Seth would be
Yeah, I think so.
yeah.
Kenny
Could
and
be.
who?
Seth Leach.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, the other field. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Could
Tim.
be any combination of those three. It's all weird in there, I think.
Frank?
Maybe somebody ought to ask Merck Foundation if they want to take over, because they do the same thing and just use the same conditions. They're big enough to handle it, and in the whole scope of what they do.
If Mark was interested, the land trust would be the first to know about it.
And Merck doesn't know yet.
And
Oh, no, they would be the first to-
regarding the farmers, if, as this goes forward, the land trust wants to loop the farmers into it, one of the farmers had actually asked to not be involved in the very first meeting, just so that the representatives of the municipalities could speak freely. But then, as they go forward, definitely, whatever group is pulled together to decide on it is going to include the farmers as well. So, obviously, they have, it's their land.
Any other old or unfinished business? We're good. Any new business?
Yes. So it was for road stuff. Another question that came was the slate policy, the town's policy for the slate pile. Dale was wondering, let me pull up, I can just remember. So somebody contacted him about getting slate from the town slate pile, and he wanted to be sure that he had a firm understanding of what our policy was. The questions were, do they need to have insurance? What kind of insurance do they need to have? Is it just a larger scale local contractor, or could it be a small independent person? And I spoke with Bob about it, and Bob's recollection was that at the time when the slate policy had first been discussed, it was that local contractors carrying insurance could get slate rubbish from our slate pile and use it for projects to benefit the community. The town of Pawlett can't make any money on it, but the idea was that the contractors utilizing the slate would keep track of the tonnage, and that they would then give us back in-kind service for $1 a ton.
$1 a yard.
Sorry, yard. So that was what was recalled, but I'm not sure. I was just wondering if anybody knew if that's written anywhere, or if that's still the deal, or just, I don't know. Dale said that he doesn't particularly feel strongly about it, but wants to make sure that he's being consistent and that he's not putting the town into any sort of, liability situations or anything.
I don't know what's exactly written in the policy.
I'm wondering, where is the policy? Does it?
And a white binder in the vault.
Oh, good. All right.
I would think the most important thing would be liability insurance.
Right. So, does that insurance, do you know anything about that?
I have not read that policy.
Okay, well, we know it
Do not feel
exists.
comfortable saying anything, but I know
It's
that
not.
ordinances and policies passed by the board exist in a binder that lives in the vault.
I'm sure you have insurance minimums in the policy, I
All
would
right.
think.
But there was, I mean,
It just
we
depends on
had,
how long ago it was written.
Right.
We should probably look it up, and then you may want to write a new policy and
Tune it up.
approve that before you make a decision on answering.
Yeah,
it.
it'll say $5,000 or something. We'll be like, oops.
wasn't that long ago, but it was,
Okay.
our concern was we didn't want Joe homeowner going out and, we didn't want somebody driving up there with a rubber tired bucket tractor and cutting their tires and suing the town. We wanted a recognized contractors in town with the correct equipment hauling the rubbish away and benefiting the people of Pawlett, not trying to necessarily prosper from it, but we wanted the people of Pawlett that needed it or could utilize it to have it. We weren't looking for the contractors from 100 miles away to come in and line equipment up and haul it all away and that type of thing. So we can't compete against the general public. So we can't sell it for so much a yard as the pile across the street can be sold by Riley Williams, but we can trade it for in-kind service for projects that the town does. And so therefore, the only ones that you could really trade for an in-kind service would be local contractors that would be insured and would be the ones that would install our culverts or dig our ditches or anything like that.
So, I will look into the policy and pull it out and send it to everybody, and at the next meeting, we can take a look at it.
Thank you.
And in the interim, how should I advise Dale?
we'll see him first of the week.
Okay.
I guess, just.
I'll pull the policy as it stands now.
We'll pull the as soon as you have the policy, then we can look it over, and then there'll be more discussion, so that's the groundwork, and there'll be more discussion to follow up at the next meeting.
Okay. Great.
Frank?
Yeah.
I would think that, because nobody was doing anything with the slate then really, and the town has been doing stuff including processing, then any processed materials would be, because the town has spent money to process, would be something that you would be giving somebody at that point in time, that you might be using in future projects. Just a thought.
And what else under new business? That's it. Does anybody else have any new business? Does anybody have public comment? Frank?
First of all, Jessica sent, did you see the email, the June 9th energy thing at the Speedway in New Hampshire? I read down through it. Do you want to explain that?
Oh, that was just in response to, Frank had sent out a group email earlier, and I just responded. It had to do with trucks, and I just responded to it with a event that I had gotten an email about which covers Vermont and New Hampshire. There's going to be an event in New Hampshire in June that talks about, it's for fleet managers and people who have trucks, talking about just future options for non-fossil fuel trucks.
Covers the gamut.
So I thought you might want to go to that, Frank.
I think
because you had some
I think
questions.
that maybe somebody who's in the truck buying business or whatever, this will be a fair, essentially, is what I read it to be.
Yeah.
There's not even a viable option out there, so it doesn't even really concern me at this point.
Well, that's the question, is if anybody wanted to go as a delegate from the select board.
It's kind of, it's smoke in the air, Frank. They can't even make a decent car yet, let alone a big truck. So when it comes,
There
we'll
was
deal
not
with
only
it
just
then.
electric involved, they were mentioning hydrogen, they were mentioning a whole bunch of other fuels other than just electric. It wasn't just EV. There was the whole gamut for big trucks. Particularly triggered because of this California ordinance where they're trying to outlaw by a certain date the sale of new diesel trucks. So that's just something on June 9th that's coming up, and it might be fun to go to, maybe not, for somebody who's interested in potentially what's coming down the pipe. The Fish and Game had its derby on Saturday. There was a bunch of kids there. It was raining a little bit, but the fish were biting like crazy. And it was, even though it was a little cool, a little rainy, there's nothing like fish biting to make things warm up.
Right.
When it's sunny, they see your shadow and it scares them away, so clouds are good.
Anybody else have any public comment?
Can I move we adjourn?
You can.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.